So why would a government hire a private army when it already has an army? That sounds like paying rent on a house you already own. Governments already have soldiers. They already have weapons. They already have generals, bases, aircraft, intelligence agencies, and defense budgets larger than most companies on Earth. And yet, again and again, governments still pay private military companies to do jobs their own soldiers could technically do. In Iraq, the US, government paid Blackwater around $1,222 per day for a single private security contractor. That works out to about $445,000 per year for one armed man in a war zone. The Congressional Budget Office later noted that this was the contractor's billing rate, not simply the worker's personal salary, because it included overhead, insurance, equipment, and company costs. But even then, the comparison was politically explosive. So the question is not, are private armies cheaper? Because often, they are not. The real question is, what are governments actually buying? And the answer is much darker. They are not buying soldiers. They are buying distance. Distance from responsibility. Distance from public scrutiny. Distance from official death counts. Distance from wars they do not want to admit they're fighting. This is the economics of private armies. Part 1. The price problem. The first thing to understand is that private armies do not exist because governments are too poor to use soldiers. They exist because governments are too politically constrained to use soldiers. A normal soldier is not just a worker. A soldier is a public obligation. If he dies, the government has to count him. If he kills civilians, the government has to answer for him. If he is deployed abroad, the mission has to be explained. If enough soldiers come home in coffins, voters start asking questions. But a contractor is different. A contractor can do similar work in the same country, often wearing similar gear, carrying similar weapons, and facing similar dangers. But politically, he sits in a gray zone. His death does not always carry the same public weight. His deployment does not always require the same public debate. His employer is not always the state directly. And when something goes wrong, blame can move through layers of contracts, subcontractors, agencies, and denials. That gray zone is the product. This is why private military companies can charge a premium. The premium is not just for the man with the rifle. It is for the political convenience of not officially sending more soldiers. That is why the phrase, private army, can be misleading. A company like Blackwater was not usually being hired to invade countries by itself. Much of the work was protective security, guarding diplomats, escorting convoys, protecting compounds, and moving officials through hostile territory. In other words, private military contractors often became the bodyguards of empire. They stood between the official state and the consequences of the war the state had created. Part 2. Blackwater and the American Model. The American model of private military contracting was built around paperwork. Contracts, invoices, oversight hearings, insurance, legal clauses, procurement rules. This model looks corporate on the surface. A government department needs a service. A private company bids for the contract. The company provides trained personnel. The government pays. But beneath the paperwork, the business model depends on something more sensitive. A contractor gives the state flexibility. In Iraq, Blackwater became one of the most famous private military companies in the world. Its contractors protected U.S. diplomats and officials in one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. From a security perspective, that work mattered. But from a political perspective, it mattered even more, because every contractor doing that job was one less uniformed soldier visibly added to the mission. That is the hidden value. A soldier is a public symbol. A contractor is a line item. This does not mean contractors were invisible. Blackwater became extremely visible, but the system around them allowed the government to separate the war's official image from the war's operational reality. That is why private contractors became one of the great enablers of the Iraq War. Brookings argued that the Iraq War, as planned and conducted, would not have been possible without private military contractors because they allowed operations to happen that might otherwise have been politically harder to sustain. This is the first major reason governments hire private armies instead of soldiers. They expand what a government can do without expanding what it has to publicly admit. Part 3. The death count problem. Nowhere is this clearer than in casualties. When a soldier dies, the state inherits the death. There are benefits, military honors, family obligations, media coverage, parliamentary or congressional questions, official statistics. Death becomes part of the war's public cost, but contractor deaths are easier to politically absorb. They are still human deaths. Families still lose fathers, sons, brothers, and husbands. But the public system processes those deaths differently. That difference matters. If a government can shift some of the most dangerous work onto private contractors, it can reduce the visible political cost of a war without necessarily reducing the actual human cost. This is where the economics becomes uncomfortable. The contractor may be expensive financially, but he can be cheaper politically. And in war, political cost is often more important than financial cost. A government may accept a higher invoice if it means fewer official troop deployments, fewer public explanations, and fewer politically damaging images. This is why the simple question, "Why not use soldiers?" misses the point. Soldiers are not free, even when they are already on the payroll. They come with political baggage. Private armies exist because they help governments manage that baggage. Part 4. When the model breaks. But there is a problem. When your product is armed men in unstable countries, your biggest risk is your own employees. On September 16, 2007, Blackwater contractors opened fire in Nisour Square, Baghdad. 17 Iraqi civilians were killed. The incident became one of the most infamous scandals in the history of private military contracting. The International Code of Conduct Association notes that the shooting led to investigations, criminal charges, backlash, and Blackwater changing its name, management, and ownership. This is the weakness of the American model. The company sells control, but the product is violence. And violence is difficult to control once it is placed in the hands of individuals under pressure. A normal business can survive a bad employee. A private military company may not, because one man having a bad day does not just create a customer service problem, it can create an international crisis. After Nisour Square, Blackwater's name became toxic. The company later rebranded, and the industry learned a brutal lesson. A private military company can win hundreds of contracts, complete thousands of missions, and build relationships across government. But one shooting can destroy the brand. This is the second reason governments hesitate to use private armies openly. They are useful because they create distance, but when they fail, that distance collapses. Suddenly, the contractor is not separate from the government anymore. He becomes proof that the government outsourced violence and lost control of it. Part 5. The Russian model. The American model uses invoices. The Russian model often uses resources. This is where Wagner enters the story. Wagner was not simply a security company in the normal corporate sense. It operated as a tool of Russian influence, especially in Africa and the Middle East. In countries such as the Central African Republic, Mali, Sudan, and Syria, Wagner-linked operations were tied not only to military support, but also to resource access, including gold, diamonds, and other strategic assets. Reports on Wagner's African activities describe a pattern where Russian-linked forces support governments or military regimes while gaining privileged access to natural resources. This is a different business model. Blackwater protected diplomats and sent invoices. Wagner protected regimes and gained leverage over mines, resources, and political influence. One model is corporate outsourcing, the other is armed extraction. But both models sell the same basic service, force without full official responsibility. In the Central African Republic, Wagner helped support the government while Russia expanded influence. In Mali, Russian-linked forces worked alongside the military government during counterinsurgency operations. In Sudan, Wagner-linked networks were connected to gold interests and Russian strategic goals. The payment was not always simple cash. Sometimes the payment was access to gold, access to mines, access to leaders, access to ports, access to influence. This is why private armies are not just military actors. They are business models attached to geopolitical strategy. Part 6. Why weak governments hire them. So far, we have looked at why powerful governments use private armies, but weak governments use them for a different reason. They are not trying to hide strength. They are trying to survive weakness. A fragile government facing rebels, jihadists, militias, or coups may not trust its own army. It may not have enough trained soldiers. It may not have air power, intelligence, logistics, or experienced commanders. So it hires outsiders. A private army can provide rapid force without the slow process of reforming a national military. For a weak regime, that is attractive. You do not need to build a competent army over 10 years. You can rent one, but the cost is dependence. Once a government relies on private fighters to survive, those fighters gain leverage. They can demand higher payment. They can demand mining rights. They can demand political influence. They can become embedded in the state itself. This is why private armies often appear in countries with weak institutions and valuable resources. The country has enough gold, diamonds, oil, or strategic geography to attract outside actors, but not enough state capacity to fully control them. That combination is perfect for private military companies: weak state, high insecurity. Valuable resources, low accountability. That is the ideal market. Part 7. The atrocity problem. The darkest side of private armies appears when accountability is weakest. In March 2022, Malian troops and foreign military personnel carried out an operation in Moura, Mali. The United Nations Human Rights Office later reported that over 500 people were killed during the operation and described summary executions, rape, and torture as potential war crimes depending on the circumstances. This is the nightmare scenario. A government hires outside fighters to solve a security problem, but the solution creates a larger legitimacy problem. Civilian deaths can strengthen insurgent recruitment. They can destroy trust in the state. They can make foreign forces look less like protectors and more like occupiers. That is the paradox. Private armies are often hired to create stability, but if they operate with impunity, they can deepen the instability that made them necessary in the first place. This is especially dangerous in counterinsurgency, because counterinsurgency is not just about killing enemies. It is about separating insurgents from the population. If civilians begin to fear the government and its foreign contractors more than they fear the insurgents, the entire strategy starts to collapse. That means the private army can win battles while losing the political war. Part 8. The success problem. But even when private armies are effective, they create another danger. They can become too powerful. This is what happened with Wagner. For years, Wagner was useful to Russia because it gave Moscow reach without always requiring official Russian deployments. It could fight, advise, protect, extract, and influence. But over time, Wagner became more than a tool. It developed its own identity, its own commanders, its own recruitment networks, its own media presence, its own economic interests, its own battlefield reputation. Then, in June 2023, Yevgeny Prigozhin launched a mutiny against Russia's military leadership. Wagner forces advanced toward Moscow before the uprising ended through a negotiated deal. 2 months later, on August 23, 2023, a plane carrying Prigozhin and other senior Wagner figures crashed, killing all 10 people aboard. AP reported that U.S. intelligence assessed that an intentional explosion likely brought the plane down. This is the ceiling of every private army. Small enough to control, it is useful. Large enough to matter, it becomes a threat. A government can outsource violence, but it cannot safely outsource loyalty. Because once a private army has thousands of fighters, resource networks, commanders, propaganda, and battlefield victories, it begins to resemble a state inside the state, and no government can tolerate a real army it does not fully control. That is why the Wagner story matters beyond Russia. It shows the final risk of hiring private armies. If they fail, they embarrass you. If they commit atrocities, they implicate you. If they succeed too much, they threaten you. Part 9. The modern market. Despite all of this, the industry keeps growing. Market estimates vary, but one 2025 forecast placed the global private military security services market at around $274.5 billion, with projections of roughly $451 billion by 2034. That growth makes sense when you look at the world today. There are wars in Ukraine and Gaza, instability in Sudan, insurgencies across the Sahel, resource conflicts in Central Africa, maritime security threats, cybersecurity threats, corporate operations in high-risk countries, governments that want influence without formal war. All of this creates demand, not just for fighters, but for logistics, training, intelligence, convoy protection, facility security, aviation support, cyber capabilities, and risk management. The private army of the future may not always look like men in camouflage storming a city. It may look like a security company protecting a mine, a drone contractor supporting a military, a logistics firm moving supplies through a war zone, a cyber unit defending infrastructure, a training company advising a weak army, a private intelligence network supporting a regime. The industry is becoming broader, more technical, and more embedded in modern conflict. This is why the term private army is useful, but incomplete. Many of these companies do not just sell combat, they sell the infrastructure around combat. They sell the ability to keep violence running. Part 10. The final thesis. So why do governments hire private armies instead of soldiers? Not because private armies are always better, not because they are always cheaper, not because they are easier to control. They hire them because private armies solve political problems that official armies create. A soldier makes war visible. A contractor makes war flexible. A soldier creates accountability. A contractor creates distance. A soldier belongs to the state. A contractor belongs to a contract. That is the real business model. Private armies allow governments to operate in the shadows between peace and war. They allow democracies to reduce the visible cost of military action. They allow dictatorships to deny involvement. They allow weak regimes to survive without fixing the institutions that made them weak. They allow corporations to operate in places where the state cannot protect them. But the same thing that makes private armies useful also makes them dangerous. They blur responsibility. They weaken accountability. They commercialize violence. They create armed organizations whose loyalty is not always clear. And when the product is violence, the business can never be fully safe. Because every private army carries the same contradiction. It is hired because the state wants power without ownership. But power without ownership eventually becomes power without control. That is why governments keep hiring private armies instead of soldiers. Not because they are cheap, but because they make war easier to deny.